Welcome to a brand spanking new episode of Who Do You Think You Are? An exploration into how our thoughts, beliefs, and feelings create our reality. My name is Lastia Cahoot and I'm your host. I'm joined by my co-host on this show and in life, Glenn Sheridan. Every episode, we're joined by a special guest who inspires us to consider not only what we think, but how we think and how that thinking impacts our life experience. It's time to get this conscious conversation started as we ask today's guest, who do you think you are?
Ready?
Ready? Hey everyone, and welcome to a brand spanking new episode of Who Do You Think You Are? My name is Lastia. I am here with my co-host on the show and in life, Glenn, who's just waving for those of you who are listening. There we go. And today we have a guest that I am once again super excited to have. We've been talking about having this person on our show for several months now. And finally, today is the day it is happening. And so I do have this incredible bio here that I was given. And there are a few things I'm going to pluck from there. But because I know a little to sort of like medium amount about this person, I'm actually just going to talk about who I know this person to be so far. So I met this individual just over a year ago, maybe almost a year and a half ago, when I had extreme pain and discomfort in my right shoulder. And I sensed from within that going to see a chiropractor was probably the right thing to do, even though that was something that I didn't really do very often in my lifetime at all. And this person was someone who came highly recommended from the spiritual center that I am a part of. And so I thought, you know what, I'll go see her like once or twice, it'll be done, and that's it, sort of thing. Well, as soon as I sat down with her and she explained the way that she works and her main form of chiropractic that she uses, oh my gosh, it was as if I were in science of mind class. And if science of mind and sort of new thought were a form of chiropractic, this is what it would be, because it is all about how our thoughts and how our beliefs end up sort of landing in our body and finding a place somewhere, and then not only shifting our thoughts and feelings out of alignment, but what ends up happening is that ends up messing with the alignment of our physical body. And so here we are almost a year and a half later, and not only am I continuing to see this person professionally, but I also happen to work at the clinic now, which is so super awesome. And so I am a huge fan of hers. I think she is so talented, so gifted, such an amazing, amazing chiropractor, and a super, super cool lady. She's one of the most stylish and fashionable people I know. She is hilarious, has an amazing sense of humor. She is a mom to two fabulous daughters and three amazing cats. She is very active, loves the outdoors. She loves paddleboarding and has recently taken up surfing. And she is just such a really unique, passionate individual. I am so excited to have her on the show today. So one of the things that I'm really, really excited to talk about further is when she gets into the type of chiropractic she specializes in, which is B.E.S.T, Bioenergetic Synchronization Technique, which we've touched on briefly in some of the other podcasts we've had. So she is a 2005 graduate from the founding school of chiropractic, which is Palmer College of Chiropractic. And she practices this B.E.S.T technique, which is really just so fascinating and mind-blowing to me, and I think to many, many others who continue to see her. And she has achieved her mastery level in B.E.S.T. And in the bio, it says that she's working on her mastery level in animal B.E.S.T, but maybe she hasn't by now. So maybe we'll find that out. Anyway, I am so delighted to introduce today Dr. Christina Clapham as our guest on the podcast. And so as we start all the podcasts, I'm just going to give the floor over to Dr. Christina and ask her, Dr. Christina, who do you think you are?
Well, thank you for having me and that amazing introduction. Thank you. Yeah, the loaded question, who do I think I am beyond all the things you just described? I think the answer that keeps coming up for me is, I'm this energetic being having this human experience right now. And I think we all are these energetic beings having this human experience. We all come to this planet to experience different journeys. And in that process, our brains and our nervous systems, they start recording things and they start creating memory banks of what our different experiences are and what our perceptions of those different experiences are unique to every single individual. So how you perceive a situation versus how I perceive a situation, we're going to have a different experience of that based on how we grew up, what we call our mother, father, teacher, preacher experiences were, what that ingraining was in our early developmental years of our nervous system, to how we respond to situations around us, whether we're in the present moment in those experiences or we're lighting up old chemical pathways of memories that get triggered that have stress responses associated with it. So it's just part of that journey of understanding that this physical body, this human experience that we're having, really actually has this whole other component of an energetic being that is happening within us that our nervous system is responding to.
You know, you just touched on so many things that I would love to expand to, and we're gonna or expand on. And some of it, I mean, we've talked about it sometimes too, but I'm in this advanced consciousness studies class on Thursday nights, which is part of my bachelor's and moving into my master's in advanced consciousness studies. And what you just talked about in terms of sort of memories and perceptions and how we all have a different experience, that's stuff that we talk about in this class as we continue to delve into quantum theory, where even though we talk about there only being one energetic flow or one consciousness that is the activity and the interconnectivity of everyone and everything, that our realities, the each individual realities that we experience, we are creating those realities based on so many different factors. And if we sort of distill it down, it's about our thoughts and beliefs that we may not even know that are, you know, so firmly rooted and ingrained in who we are. But once we become more aware of them and realize that we are this incredible power, that same power that like holds the blazing sun in the sky, that is every blade of grass, that is all the flowers that are coming up, you know, in the ground right now, that is constantly creating and evolving and emerging. It's really incredible to know that once we sort of tune into that, that the you know, we can be having the exact same life experience, but if we shift our perspective, then we have a new experience because we're seeing it in a different way. And just one of the things that, you know, I've come to really value in seeing you professionally is the treatments. There's the work you do is so in tune with what I am studying and just continues to support the idea that, you know, we can live our life by design. We don't have to live it by default. We don't have to just keep on going with the same aches and pains and feelings and confusion and whatever. That there are ways to deal with it, to open yourself up to leaving well, leaving that stuff behind, to living, you know, a more energized, more vital, more vibrant life. So that was just kind of one thing that came to mind, you know, in terms of sort of perspective and perception. But there's so much more. And so this is like really early on in the podcast, but Honey Bunch, I'm going to kind of turn to you because you just started seeing Dr. Christina recently. And so this is a very new experience for you, just maybe, you know, a few weeks in. So do you want to sort of talk about that? Also maybe bringing in some of, you know, your Seth background or whatever.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I was just looking at the core score chart that you did on the first visit. May I call you Christina, or is Dr.
Sure.
Christina?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So, and it was the 16th of February, which it's like a month, right? So almost. And I feel way better.
Yay!
Yes. And, I did have this one chief complaint, and that has changed a little bit to something else in the time that you've been treating me, which I'm extremely grateful for. And I'm very, it's making me, I think these visits are actually making me more aware of being in my body, or let's say my being, my mind, and who I am, and how it lives in my body.
Hmm.
It's like our bodies are like vehicles, I guess. So we're in them part of the time, but we're also like elsewhere, our minds are elsewhere. So the little time that I spent with you, because they are pretty, they're not really long involved visits, apart from the first one that's a little bit more in depth, and it's information gathering, and I'm sure you're getting a sense of who the person is, the patient, and how receptive they are um, to what your treatment might be, plus how willing they are to change, or to take a different approach to their healing.
Hmm.
As I imagine, I mean, you must have dealt with thousands of people, and each of those people, it just dawned on me this morning. I thought, right, everyone's got their own belief system here about what works and what is possible,
Hmm.
and why a thing happened, right? And why did why do they have a sore whatever foot or back, or twisted nerve or whatever, and they're all coming from different um, origin points of their beliefs of what, like, why that could ever have happened. It's either from, I have no idea how this happened, I just got up one day and it was there, or I've had it all my life. But it's this thing of each of your patients is going to have their own, um, I forget what your term was, but like mother, father, uh, parent. Sorry, what was the teacher,
Mother,
preacher?
father, teacher, preacher.
Yeah,
That's good. I
Experience.
like that.
those are many different influences that we gather as we're being, socialized as kids, and then throughout our years of our being a teenager, and into our young adulthood, and then we set off on our path, and we kind of lock into those kind of like schools of thought of what's available and what's possible. And I would imagine you're dealing with so many different, like, you know um, worldviews, we'll say, so that when you're dealing when you're doing a touch thing, with me it's my feet, so you're like doing stuff, and my body's like, just doing its thing, and there's a connection that happens, right? So I imagine you're going to have some people who are like, what is this all about?
Mhm.
And then at the other end, you've got, people even more enthusiastic than Lassie and myself about, hey, thank you. At last, this is good. This is like happening. It's opening up. It's freeing up memories. And I mean, even on our first visit, you asked me questions about like an older trauma, and I had no idea what you're talking about at first, and it came out over a few days, two possibilities, that I had just not thought about, had buried, had thought, what's that got to do with this moment point? It's got nothing to do with me. But clearly, if it's in my body, I thought it was important enough to keep it there, or my body reacted to do something with that experience, and locked it into the cells of my body, I guess, right?
Mhm.
So that's one thing I'm really impressed with, is you've got probably quite a range of ability of dealing with many different, as I said, worldviews and approaches and levels of openness to change and healing.
Mhm.
And maybe you've been challenged at times where you're just going to refer people on. I don't know how that would even work, but um, Is that something that you think about ever, or you just sort of, that's what I do?
Think about whatever as far as referring people on, or
Well, just your abilities and what they are in terms of dealing with clients,
ah,
right?
yeah, definitely, because there are all walks of life and experiences for sure, and people have their different belief systems. For the most part, I attract people that are open to the work that I'm doing. Most people do either come through word of mouth, or you've checked me out a little bit and have an understanding of um, what I do, or they're completely clueless and walk in the door. And that is why I spend extra time, more so than most chiropractors, in that initial patient visit, because I do want to get to know the person and understand where they're at. Not just about what their physical complaint or ache or pain is that they're coming in with me, which is a very allopathic model, right? Of, hey, that's where it hurts. We're just going to treat that area, and we're going to diagnose that area. And then, either it gets better or it doesn't. And we'll, if we can't help you, we'll refer you on to different kinds of practitioners, which is great. There's a time and a place for that. But really what I'm more interested in is getting to the true nature of how can this body self-heal and self-regulate to its optimum full potential, there where again, my background of how I was raised, going to the founding school of chiropractic, even in our philosophy classes, we're taught, we are these innate beings with the ability to absolutely self-heal and self-regulate everything. For every major illness that there is out there, minus, a few genetic disorders that we're born with, which are basically like a handful of things, everything can self-heal and self-regulate. There's cases of it out there everywhere, miracles that are happening. So what is it that's creating that interference there? What is it that's creating the block in that ability of that body to self-heal and self-regulate? And that's what I'm more interested in getting to with people, and helping them to understand that what's creating the block there. A big part of what I was taught in school, and preface that because this does not happen in all chiropractic colleges. But what I was taught is, there's thoughts, traumas, toxins there that create interference in the body. So is it a chemical deficiency or efficiency? Do people have problems that are happening on a chemical level with their bodies? They're not getting the proper vitamins and minerals and nutrients. They're not feeding their body what it needs. Or they're being exposed to a lot of things that are causing inflammation in the body and causing toxicity in the body. That all affects the nervous system and its ability to self-heal and self-regulate. You go over to the traumas, right? We do have physical injuries that do happen to us. Blunt force trauma can blow a disc in the back, for example. But honestly, that's a very small percentage of the cases. Most people have chronic illnesses that have been building up for years and years that I see, or they have this acute low back pain, but what they don't realize is, but it took 30 years to actually get to that point, because only 10% of your nervous system actually registers pain. So if you're to the point where the body is showing you pain, there's been all this survival mechanism that your body's had prior to that got you to that point where your body finally says, enough, I can't compensate. I can't be in this compensating survival mode anymore. Too much damage is done. I need to start showing you pain here so you can start taking action and different action and start making changes. But the unfortunate part is there's sometimes been 30, 40 years of a problem building up within that body that has led to that pain signal finally showing up. So the reality of that being a quick fix is just not realistic. We got to look into, how did that body get to that position in the first place? What happened that created that level of interference that's now happening and causing that level of pain? So again, getting a thorough understanding of that person and what their life has been helps me to understand that, because we put, the traumas I was just talking about, the positive side of that is how people are moving their bodies, how their exercise level. So many people are very sedentary. They're not stretching, they're not doing weight bearing exercises, they're not doing cardiovascular exercises, they're not doing things to take care of this physical human body that we have, because we are in, again, we are these spiritual beings, but we're in this physical body. Mm-hmm. So we need to take care of it. We need to give it that baseline. We need to feed it right. We need to exercise it right. We need to utilize our bodies. But we put the thoughts right at the top of that pyramid there, because current science is now showing us that, anywhere from 90 to 98% of the time, what shows up in our physical body is due to what happens in the brain first. What are the thought patterns there that are happening? What is that brain's response to our environment that's happening all around us? So that's what I want to understand, is where people are at on all those different planes there. So then we can start adding health into the equation, because, it's no fun to start telling people to take things away from them, especially if they have patterns and habits of behavior. We need to change those patterns of behavior, because it's those patterns of behavior that got them into trouble in the first place. And sometimes they're aware of that and sometimes they aren't there. So it's about tapping into figuring out what is creating the biggest levels of interference. Usually in those categories, people are better in one area than the other. You have the people that are athletes and they come in and they're always, hey, how can I fix this through exercise? Or how can I fix this through certain stretches? And again, there is a time and a place for that. That is important. That can be the solution. But what I'm more interested in is, okay, well, why can't you do that now? What's getting in the way of you just doing those exercises there? You've been trying to do that, but you're telling me that you can't do that right now because of the pain. So what's causing that level of pain? So 9 times out of 10 for those people, yeah, they've been doing so good in the exercise department, but maybe they're not eating great there, and they're creating all this inflammation in their body from their food, which is showing up in their joints, because we tend to accumulate, as we're going through a rest and repair phase at night. If we've eaten a bunch of highly acidic food, for example, the day before, we're going to wake up feeling puffy and achy and our joints hurting us because of that chemical toxicity within the body. Or is it their thoughts? And again, a lot of the times it's the thoughts. Mm-hmm. We're not necessarily the thoughts. That's pretty simplistic form of saying it. It's where is that subconscious brain being triggered by things in your environment that your body has hung on to. And you made a point earlier of all these experiences that we have. Well, there's a whole bunch of research out there now saying that 50% of our memories aren't true. Yeah. So how we remember things and hang on to these memories of how things are, how we think they are, 50% of the time, that's not even true. That wasn't even actually your experience. That wasn't the true experience that you had. It's just how your brain chose to remember that experience there. And within that, we create these memory patterns, or within B.E.S.T, which is the technique I do called Bioenergetic Synchronization Technique, or one of the techniques I do utilize other chiropractic techniques as well. But the uniqueness of this one is looking at our S.E.M.Os, we call them, or our subconscious emotional memory overrides. Where is that brain hanging on to old memory patterns that are showing up in our physical body because they're getting stimulated there? So we start developing our neural cortex up here, starts at about 3 months in utero there. So we start to develop our perception of the world actually when we're still in mom's tum there, and based on what mom's experiences were. So, how was pregnancy for her? How is she excited about being pregnant? Or was that a traumatic experience being pregnant? What all of those feelings that the mother is having are playing a role in how that brain starts to develop at those early fundamental years. Then we're born and we have this whole other kind of first 2 years of life where we have a whole bunch more development of that brain that's happening based on what we're seeing and perceiving all around us. So again, I wish I knew more about this even when my kids were really little and had a better understanding of, oh my God, they really are these little sponges that are absorbing everything that they are hearing and seeing and smelling and feeling all around them, is making up their perception of how the world works around them there. So, whether that's in a very peaceful family environment where everything is flowing and all their needs are being provided for, versus a traumatic experience where there's lots of yelling and arguing and instability happening within that environment. It's in that early hardwiring of that safety net of how the world is working all around us. So again, those are some of the questions sometimes that I ask people of, if they're open and willing. You have to feel people out. And I've had a lot of training as well outside of chiropractic school and business and in psychology and in human development and coaching, and you name it. I've spent a lot of time getting a lot of other education outside of chiropractic of how to talk to people, how to read them, how to understand where people are at and what they're willing to share too, because you don't want to scare people in those first visits of what they're not ready to look at. But those initial, what was your childhood like, is an important question doctors should be asking. It is part of our key history that we are supposed to be asking. A lot don't, because we are restricted by time, and people have big histories there. So a lot focus in on, okay, what is that key thing that this person is wanting help with? That's what I have time to help them with. What I'm more interested in is, okay, well, what's been the big picture of your life, so we can understand where is that nervous system holding on to trauma that is showing up as pain within the body there, or interference within the body. So again, back to that childhood of what was that experience like? Now, I don't ask that with everyone. Some people volunteer that. Sometimes I don't have time to get to all of that because the history is so big for them of what's happening in that moment. So again, it's explaining that, to work with me, it's not a 1 or 2, 3 visit situation. We're looking way bigger than that. Sometimes it's, my patients that I call my rock stars, or who have transformed their lives, they've been with me for 10, 15 years. They went on a journey of intense, life-changing experiences in that first year of, okay, looking at all of those different areas of their life. Where can I start adding more health into those? Where can I start eating right, or adding more healthy nutrition into that? For some people, it's like, okay, we're going to start you with drinking more water.
Yep.
That simple, right? And hopefully by drinking more water, maybe you'll stop drinking a pot of coffee in the morning there, like trying to add health into the equation. So hopefully some of the things that are not serving them start to filter out there. And with the thoughts, again, sometimes you just have to feel every single person out of where they're at first in their foundation of what's that trauma been like for them, where are their nervous systems at in that moment, And what are the little key health equations we can keep adding in? For some, an amazing tool is meditation for calming that central nervous system. There's all kinds of scientific research out there right now showing that. But for some people, they're not open to that because of their belief system. I have a very diverse basis of belief systems. In different religious forms, for example, some of my clients don't believe in meditation. So we have to reframe that into a language that they can understand. Maybe it's prayer for them. Maybe it's just sitting and being quiet there. So we're just being. Some of them, it's like, okay, well, go and sit at the beach and stare at the waves. Mm-hmm. Go lean up against a tree and just sit with that tree and try and think nothing. It's however you want to language, because again, people get caught up on labels of things. So you have to feel out, what can they hear? What are they open to? What's the appropriate language to use with each person that you can reach them to understand that really, where is that interference coming from and what are the tools we need to use to remove it? So with bioenergetic synchronization technique, what we're looking at is where is the nervous system responding to those old subconscious emotional memory overrides? Where are we getting stimulated in our day-to-day exposure, be it in our thoughts, be it smells, be it a feeling that we had that is somehow triggering off an old stress pattern within the nervous system. And when that stress pattern gets triggered, and that can be through any of those things, how that shows up then in our physical body, and are we aware of it? So sometimes, like you said, people will have an ankle pain, let's say. They can't figure out because they didn't sprain their ankle. They didn't have a direct blunt force trauma to that ankle. It's what we call an insidious onset of pain. They don't know where it came from. So yes, we can go in and we're going to look structurally whether there is damage that's happened there. But 9 times out of 10, I'll find look at this really contracted muscle in this calf here. Your gastrocnemius is like on fire right now. It's just super firing way harder than it should be. Okay, well, we can go in and we can try and massage that out. We can look at the joints on other side of it. And again, there's a time and place for those things where that is appropriate. But if I have them think clear blue skies, for example, which is a nice little nervous system interruption of generally a positive thought for people, and all of a sudden that muscle just naturally relaxes and melts and is no longer contracted and tight, we got to go back to the brain. What is that signal that's being sent from the brain to that muscle that's causing it to be tight? Because if it truly was just a mechanical joint issue, which again, sometimes it is, that muscle would stay tight or that muscle would stay contracted, is what I find for people. We go through and we look for what is the mechanical misalignment that's happening there and what is the misalignment that's happening from the nervous system sending inappropriate fight or flight signals to that body there. So that's where the B.E.S.T comes into it, is starting to ask the brain to send a different signal to say, hey, this isn't an emergency anymore. It was once upon a time in my life. And I created this survival memory for that because we are creatures of survival. There, we are all innately designed to survive. That's our first instinct. And when we get hit by a trigger there, so again, for example, let's say you and Lasia were driving down, or the two of you were driving down the road, having this beautiful, loving conversation with each other. You were in this fantastic place of joy and happiness and love when, boom, you get bushwhacked. A car hits you there and your head goes flipping into a whiplash type injury situation. So in that moment, your body is going into survival mode it just got startled. It just got threatened there. But there's a part of your brain that goes, okay, there's a threat. I need to start creating a memory here, because if I experience this threat again, I'm going to be able to respond even quicker next time there. So there's a part of the brain that starts to remember the emotions that you were experiencing at that time. So that love and joy just got linked in to the whiplash injury. What you're hearing. So say there's a smash, there's squealing tires, there's things happening, smells, say there's a gas leak, there's the sensory nervous system starts to remember everything. So for example, and you smell an apple pie, and all of a sudden you have this vivid memory of baking apple pies with your grandmother when you were a child. It's those kind of memories that get stored within the same experience. And then, of course, you have the physical experience that happens. So, for example, let's say in a whiplash injury, you damage tissues within the neck up there and create micro tears in there. And then within 72 hours, you go into this inflammatory and this scar tissue process. And within the first week, you could have had your head thrown off center, and all of these tissues starting to remember this new positioning happening there. That's all linked into all of these experiences that you've just had that are now being stored within those tissues within that neck. So now, let's say later on, you guys are, you've healed those tissues, it's been a few weeks, the body's going into self-healing, self-regulating, it starts to heal things up on a physical level, but you're driving down the road again and you hear some tires squealing. And all of a sudden, it's like you've got that whiplash pain again happening, because your body it created this memory in there to serve you to some regard. If there's squealing tires, guess what? I better be on high alert and see what's going to hit me again here, which is a natural survival mechanism. But also you have these emotions of love and joy and happiness that you were experiencing at that time that can also become triggers there. So you guys could be in this loving, joyful conversation again, and all of a sudden you're like, oh man, why does my neck hurt there? Okay, well, that got linked in there as your brain's survival mechanism of, okay, well, that was the emotion I was experiencing at that time. So therefore, there must be something bad that's going to happen to me there. But we all know love and joy is supposed to be feeling good, right? But your brain has a different perception of love and joy. So, going back to like feelings aren't good or bad or negative or positive. There are perceptions of what we think these feelings are based on our experiences. So love and joy, we would think, would be these beautiful, heartwarming, feel good experiences. But for some people, they're not. They've had trauma that's happened with those experiences of love and joy. And then they can't understand, why can't I just experience love and joy? Why can't I get in touch with that? Why can't I get deep down and tuned with love and joy and have that feel good in my body? But it's triggering off something at a subconscious level that's then sending these emergency signals to the body that doesn't feel good. So that's what we're looking at with the B.E.S.T technique, is just asking the brain to send different signals, saying, okay, that was fine in that moment, yes, but that's no longer serving you anymore. We need to shift those neural patterns happening there. And that's what the technique's a lot about, is shifting those programs that our nervous system is hanging on to say, okay, that is no longer serving you anymore. So let's get rid of those inappropriate signals and create proper flow to those muscles and to those tissues. And that can show up in I'm bringing it, I bring it back around to chiropractic because I am a chiropractor, and that's what my licensing is, and there's parameters I have to stick within with my licensing. But it's so much bigger than that. It's so much, the foundation of chiropractic is so much bigger than that, than what most people understand it to be. And again, that has a lot to do with the education that I received versus what people receive at some other schools. About the body's ability to self-heal and self-regulate. We are all these innate, intelligent beings that absolutely have the ability to self-heal and self-regulate. We just need to be able to tap into it. And this is just a really unique way that I was really attracted to at times. And again, it was just timing of being introduced to the mortars, of yes, this is what I was actually raised with, these belief systems, and
So
this is why I became a chiropractor.
that's Ted Moore, the innovators of that program, or Mortar, Ted Mortar, is it? And
So MT mortar. So there's lots of Ted mortars. There's several generations of them.
okay.
So MT Mortar Junior, actually, is, we call him the dad. He was the developer of the B.E.S.T Bioenergetic Synchronization Technique.
Okay.
It's got to be probably, I'd say, close to 50 years now ago that he started out in as a scientist, and became a chiropractor. And he he used to do, like, the diversified techniques, we call it, or I'm just going to say the snap crackle pop kind of chiropractic techniques, and started to ask, why aren't people holding those adjustments? Why, when we move the bones back into place, don't they stay there? And what else is happening here? So, off on his journey of exploring with, there's other chiropractors too that were on that journey as well. And he talked to many of them and did much of his own research and development. He was a scientist at heart. His kids tell many great stories of being guinea pigs of many of his experiments, including all big conversations around their table that they share these experiences, because his three children, Dr. Sue, Dr. Ted, and Dr. Tom Mortar, all became chiropractors as well, and have continued on with their father's work. He passed away a few years ago. And they've all gone in their different directions of how they're sharing the information. So Dr. Ted and Dr. Tom are continuing on to teach the bioenergetic synchronization technique to chiropractors, and now they've expanded it on to other people can learn this work beyond chiropractic. And Dr. Sue Mortar has created more what we call spiritual B.E.S.T, or she's moved into energy codes. She's developed a whole nother system and protocol based on her experiences growing up with her dad and her training. So it's evolved beautifully into many ways. You asked me about the animal B.E.S.T. There's a whole animal portion of this training too. And yes, I have gone through and done my certification and mastery program in it. I don't do a ton of work with animals because I'm so busy with humans. But I do love to check in on people's animals too. If I've seen some cool things happen with, huge kidney stones just disappearing on a dog, and like x-ray evidence of it, it disappearing. Like, so it's cool of how, again, once you start removing that interference of those fight or flight signals that are being sent to the body, how the body can then just start self-healing and self-regulating its own self and taking care of itself.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Wow. So I've
So
written
much.
I've written 2 pages of notes already. There were so many things that came up when you were speaking there. I mean, it part of me went back to when I was doing more integrative nutrition health coaching work, and how people, even when I'd work in the health and wellness, like at Sydney Natural Foods in Sydney, for 2.5 years, and people would come in, or I would have a client and they really wanted to, say, lose weight. And they were just, they thought that they ate well, but there were things that definitely they could change. But they'd get to a certain point where they were eating all the right foods, they were juicing from time to time, they were taking the right supplements, they were exercising in some way, and it wasn't happening. And so it kind of, there's the one sort of the supplement route was, well, like, are you actually digesting and assimilating what it is that you're taking in? Because if your gut isn't in working order, if you have holes in your, if you have leaky gut syndrome, no matter how great the food is, no matter how organic and clean and preservative free and all that kind of stuff it is, your body's not going to use it in the way that it's supposed to use it, and you're just going to end up peeing it out, and you're not going to end up getting the benefits out of it. If you are doing all that stuff, and physically your body is seemingly healthy, but you have these beliefs that you're not even aware of, where well, I could never do that, or I don't deserve to do that, then that's always going to end up being a block, or the word you use is interference. It's always going to get in the way of progress beyond where you are, sort of thing. Money is a huge thing for people, where it just, like, why can't I get a better job? Why don't I have more money coming into my life? Why do I have so many expenses? Well, there are beliefs that are in play, and if you're not aware of what they are, then they're always going to be what you're sort of, hitting yourself up against, no matter what kind of progress, or what you're doing, what you're trying to do. And even when you know what they are, then it can take time to sort of, whether it's peeling away the layers of the onion, whether it's, clearing the interference, whether it's kind of like digging and unearthing, those beliefs that are in play. It isn't necessarily, it can be, it's totally within the realm of possibility, but it isn't necessarily it's going to happen, sort of automatically or spontaneously. And there isn't necessarily one thing that's going to get you, to living that most amazing, vibrant potential that, you are meant to live. And so what continue to learn as I go through my studies, and as I do, my spiritual studies, and as I do the consciousness work that I'm doing, is that all of the stuff that I find is working for me, that it'll work for a while, and then it has to shift, because every single moment we're being created anew. I mean, if you go sort of like to quantum theory, and that there are these infinite possibilities that are constantly, like, every single moment, all of those possibilities are collapsing into realities. So there's all of these different, realities or possibilities of life that I could be focusing on, but right now I'm focusing on this one. But from moment to moment to moment, it's a brand new moment. I'm a brand new me. That what I was doing, a minute ago, 10 minutes ago, a year ago, whatever, that's got to change, because I'm a different me than I was before. And so the things that may have worked then don't necessarily work now. And, maybe in simpler terms, it's like, changing the changes of the seasons affect our bodies. As we age, our bodies, become different. But it doesn't have to be the thinking of, what consensus is, say, when it comes to aging, that the body automatically breaks down. I mean, that's a belief. That is a race consciousness belief that tons and tons of people buy into. And even if you don't buy into it, it can be really challenging to not buy into it, when there is this collective consciousness that is like, but that's just what happens. So So I have so many questions. But I guess, like for me, I have, I'm a believer in that there are many different paths and many different modalities, and that even though it's all energy, that this energy is expressing in different ways, and as that energy expresses and grows and evolves and morphs and shifts and changes and whatever, and as I'm shifting and changing, as that energy, that going to see you, for chiropractic, being in spiritual studies and advanced consciousness studies, meditating on a daily basis, mixing up the meditations. One day it's a 90-minute Joe Dispenza, another day it's listening to 20 minutes of, powerful affirmations by Kenneth on YouTube. Sometimes it's just reading something and just sitting there quietly, or going out into nature and just feeling the energy of a tree or the grass, or Glenn does grounding, where he just like puts his bare feet on the ground and just gets the energy of the earth into the body, and exercise and eating and mindfulness and so they're like, I guess what I'm getting at is there are people who I guess might end up coming to you thinking that you're the one doing the work, that you're the one who's going to change them. Kind of like, go to a doctor, the doctor gives me, a pill, I take the pill, I'm better. And then there are those people, like you said before, like your rock star patients, or maybe somewhere in between, where they come to see you and then they start to shift in all these other areas of their lives. Something as simple as drinking more water, which is, when I was an integrative nutrition health coach, that was the number one question that we asked, that we started off with, and the change was, let's get you drinking more water. How much water are you drinking every day? Because when someone's dehydrated, I mean, that's not a great place to start from at all. So get hydrated, become more alert, get that metabolism more, more efficient, working more efficiently. And then, like you said, start bringing in more healthy options versus cutting things out. And as you bring in the healthy stuff, as you bring in, the food, as you bring in the supplements, as you bring in the mindfulness, as you bring in the exercise, being out in nature, whatever it is that feeds your soul and nourishes you in some way, then all of those things working in a complementary fashion are what ultimately, allows you to just sort of, become more of who you innately are anyway. But going back to, there are people who just, I think, might come in and just think that Dr. Christina is fixing me. And so is there, because this is energy work mainly, well, I mean, it's all energy, but could people just continue to come and see you? Or have you had this experience where they really don't change anything else in their lives, but they just continue to come and see you on a regular basis, and enough interference clears that they just end up being able to live their, most amazing, live up to their potential? Have you had that experience?
Um, in some regard, yes. Um, it generally does take people being willing to make some changes
Yeah.
and shift some of their belief systems. But what we do find is sometimes by removing that subconscious triggers happening within the nervous system, they're better able to do that. So, people will start to notice that their relation, like, how people, they're like, their relationship starts to shift and change with
Mm-hmm.
their spouses or with their children, because they're showing up differently in those relationships. And you start to see things evolve, or all of a sudden they're getting a new job and they're manifesting new relationships, or things start to shift and change in their lives around them that they're not necessarily aware of.
Mm-hmm.
But you start to see them slowly like evolving into what their ideal was, things that they wanted to create for themselves, but didn't think they could, all of a sudden start showing up
Mm-hmm.
for them, and all of a sudden start happening for them. And usually, because again, I try to get to know the people for their people. Like, I love treating families, for example. I have multiple families that I've had several generations of. So again, you made a comment yesterday about a certain family that we're excited to have you in the clinic, which is awesome because we all are excited to have you. But what you may not know is, with that family, I've treated multiple generations and multiple members of that family.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to treat the grandmother, who's now passed away. I treat multiple of her children, our members. And then the person you talk to is a child of one of those. Who has 3 children that I treat. So within that, and I treat the cousins are in that group. And so there's a large group of everything from the grandparents. So we've got the grandkids, we've got the parents, we've got the grandmother, and we have the great grandmother.
Wow.
All being treated. And then we have the great grandmother, we have the other sibling and their children now that are coming in. So again, when we're working with and understanding those family dynamics there for that many generations, it allows me to see lots of the dynamics that have happened within that family. And as the cool thing about working with a large family like that is they're all working on stuff. And they're all getting interference of things that haven't worked for them in the past out of the way. And, and it's interesting because, again, I'll go back to, like, this is a family that does not really necessarily believe in meditation, for example. They have different religious beliefs there, and even within those family dynamics, there's multiple different religious beliefs systems that are happening there. So it's not about limiting in any way of their belief systems. It's about recognizing, are those belief systems serving you or not serving you? And are they enhancing your experience here on this planet, or are they getting in the way of your experience here on this planet? Were they belief systems that were ingrained at an early age that you just think are true because you were told they were true, but really there's something in your body that's saying, I'm not resonating with that anymore? And starting to just recognize that and make those shifts. So again, those dynamics start to shift within the generations as well. So as much as, some of those people still come in and go, yeah, but it hurts here. Like, something must be going on with this shoulder here. It's like, okay, well, yeah, there is something going on with with that shoulder there. You've got all these tight muscles that are holding it up into this position here. So that's pinching on nerve roots, and that's creating numbness and tingling down into your arm. Yeah, there is something wrong happening there. But where is the source of the interference that's causing that? Yes, this person may have some degeneration happening within their spine. There may be some, the matter, the physicalness of the body may need some support in restructuring itself, because they may have a decrease in their disc heights and bone spurs and things like that. But again, one of my mentors who's been doing this work for over 30 years in a conference showed an x-ray of someone with massive bone degeneration and huge bone spurs that did a couple, like literally only did a few B.E.S.T treatments on them. They went away because they felt better, didn't come back for another year later, but because of the medical system that they were in, they had to do a re-x-ray on them, and their bone spurs had disappeared And this was an 80-year-old person
Wow.
who was kind of like, whatever, I'm at the end of my life. All I care about is getting out of pain.
Mm-hmm.
They literally had bone spurs disappear, which again, that's considered a miracle. Like, that's not supposed to be able to happen there. But again, we are all held together by energy, right? Like, what's holding this physical beingness of us together is this energy system that's in our bodies that has this ability to go back to normal again. And that's a situation of an 80-year-old. I have another 80-year-old patient who had major accidents and injuries and traumas. They went down in World War II in a fighter plane. They, I believe, were prisoner of war. But I took an x-ray of them in their 80s and they have this perfect neck. Perfect.
Wow.
Like, better than mine. What is up? I'm like, you just explained all of these traumas that you've had in your life, but there's not evidence of it in your bones per se there. Well, he went on to explain his belief systems, and he meditates, and both of his children happened to be chiropractors living in other parts of the world and had been under chiropractic care most of his life. And you start asking more questions. It's like, okay, this guy has been eating right, he's been thinking right, and he's been moving right for most of his life. And look at his perfect spine. So again, what is physically happening within our body and our physical matter, yes, we can just look at that, which is what our mainstream medical system is set up to do. And again, there's a time and a place for that. But really, let's tap into this body's ability to self-heal and self-regulate everything there. And why not? Why can't you be part of that? So again, yes, there's a diversity of people's willingness to understand that and accept that. And I would say, again, I do attract people that are open to that for sure and willing, but there's a large majority of my patients that still go back to, but it hurts here, doc. And what do I got to do to get rid of that pain there? And again, you just have to deal with that individual of where they're at and start removing that interference. And for some of them, it's like, yeah, okay, cool. I don't know what you did, doc. I don't understand it, but I do know I feel better and I feel great. And I don't know what you're doing down there wiggling my feet, but it makes me feel good. So I'm going to just keep coming because I see the difference in my body.
And so I guess just by virtue of coming, then, even if they feel like they're not actively doing anything themselves, they're choosing to continue to come and see you. They're choosing to continue, to come and participate in those treatments. And so just by virtue of that, I guess, that in and of itself is definitely a choice on their part. That's a change that they're making again and again and again, because they could just go, well, you know what, it's not working, and then not come back.
Yeah. And there's plenty of patients. We saw several yesterday morning that have been with me for 15 plus years. They really have struggled I can't get them to exercise. I can't get them to change their diet. Like, they want to, but their habits of behavior and their belief systems are so stuck. Like, they challenge there with making that leap, making that shift into changing those aspects of their life to really get them, to the vitality that I would know and love to see them have, because I've seen it happen for others.
Yeah.
But, they haven't been able to break through yet.
Yeah.
But in other ways in their lives, they totally have. And there's ways where, they get that we're at least preventing the situation from getting worse within their bodies, and they feel better, and we are able to at least get them out of pain and functioning. and they do have these little things that pop up and shift and change within their lives, and we celebrate those. And I make a point of it, like, look what you created, or look what's shifted and happened. And
Yeah.
look, like, they'll go through periods where they will get on board and they will change those diets and they will start to see that shift and change in their body. We celebrate that and hope they can continue on to it. But we're all humans, and sometimes we slip back into those old patterns of behavior. And it's that constant reinforcement of, hey, well, remember what it felt like when you made those nutrition changes and started to make those shifts? Or remember what it felt like when you were doing your tai chi on a daily basis, and the changes we saw in your body and how that shifted when you did that? What can we do to get you back on track with that? What's getting in the way of that? So maybe that'll be a reoccurring thought that we'll have them think of and see, okay, where is that body going into a stress pattern around that? Because even things that are good for us sometimes have this subconscious negative belief system that's getting in the way of actually being able to do those things there. So, yes, the technique can help unlock those patterns within the body, and then it's the willingness on that person to, how much are they willing to actually start doing things different there? How much are they willing to actually look at their belief systems and start making shifts? So again, those that are willing to do that exponentially get bigger results.
Yeah.
Those that aren't are still getting results, typically within their bodies. It's just it's a slower process and journey there. And then there are people, of course, that I see that are like, it's not right for them. It's not the right fit for them. And I'm happy to refer to other chiropractors or to, I co-care with many chiropractors in the city, because we all do things differently. We all have different techniques. And, there's areas that aren't my forte that I'll say, hey, I need you to go see Dr. So-and-so because I see this problem going on within your system. And I think they can help you better with that particular situation. But I would love to still help you with what I'm doing. And I do find when we're combining these multiple techniques together, we can exponentially help you reach your health goals faster. There. So sometimes it takes a team.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so now I do want to ask, because I wrote it down and I thought of it when you that mother, father, teacher, preacher, which I think is such a neat sort of, I don't know, line, whatever it is you have studied with some pretty amazing people. You've talked briefly about the Mortars. A couple of other people, which some listeners might recognize names of, are Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton. And so could you tell us a bit about, your experiences with each of those? Start with whomever you like. But yeah, we'd love to hear more about Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton.
Yeah, well, my first introduction was with Bruce Lipton. He was one of the guest professors at chiropractic school. Actually, he came in and taught us for several weeks on his principles and concepts of cellular belief and energy systems. And it's an interesting time in my world, because I'd just given birth to my second child in chiropractic school. So I missed a couple classes because I was busy giving birth. But with both my kids, I was back at school within days. And brought my kids with me as infants, and just listening to him and his concepts of energy and going, cool, this is awesome. Again, these were concepts I was raised with. My parents introduced me to many of these concepts at a very young age. You know, my mom would drive an hour to prenatal yoga from Machosen to the Y, because that was the only place back then where you could do yoga in the city.
Wow.
You know, they introduced me to meditation at a very young age. My dad would sit and teach me how to feel energy between my hands when I was 9 or 10 years old. Concepts that I was raised with that we were now talking about in our philosophy class in chiropractic school, when, you know, this was closer to the end of my chiropractic training. And these concepts were in our philosophy classes there, that, you know, about energy and innate intelligence. And these are all very much part of our training at Palmer College of Chiropractic. And we had an amazing president at the time who was responsible for bringing people like Bruce Lipton in to be guest professors. So I got to hear his concepts of when actually it was before he had written his books, and when he was kind of getting started on, not getting started, but, you know, prior to being a well-known name, let's say. He was teaching us many of these concepts that are now in his Biology of Belief book. Has evolved into that. So that was fascinating to see those concepts coming up in chiropractic school, and being taught that we are all energy, and that our environment is more important than our genetics there, that really our genetics are what they are, but it's how they're expressing themselves based on the environment that we put ourselves in, right? So again, back to that thoughts, traumas, toxins. How are we taking care of those cells there? So that was an amazing experience. And of course, I talked to many of my clients and encourage them to, you know, read his books, listen to his information, so they can understand those concepts of how important our environment is, that our bodies are in, to their ability to self-heal and self-regulate. And Dr. Joe Dispenza, a friend and colleague of mine that I was helping actually train him in the B.E.S.T technique, introduced me to Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. He's like, hey, I think you would totally love what this guy is doing. I can't remember, this was many years ago. And him, you know, Dr. Dispenza being a chiropractor, of course, it's like, ooh, okay, well, about. And then what he's talking about the brain and its ability to self-heal and self-regulate, and how he was starting to pull in the science of everything, because that's the biggest challenge that we've had in our profession is, you know, so much of our population has been, one, raised in a medicine cabinet, and been kind of almost brainwashed to the idea that we can do whatever we want to our bodies, and there'll be some drug or surgery there that will fix it. And that we are these physical beings, that we need to do physical things to heal, versus, but that's not been what chiropractic has been about. It's been about the body's ability to self-heal and self-regulate. But, you know, we haven't had the funding to do the scientific research there to really show that. We haven't had the technology out there of mechanisms to measure and quantify chiropractic to the level that, you know, there's so much untapped potential of understanding what chiropractic truly is from a scientific, quantifiable mechanism. It's happening, it's evolving, it's shifting, it's changing. That research is being done, those studies are happening. But, you know, unfortunately, there's so much going to trying to fit into the allopathic model, and low back pain, and you know, the back to that physical body, and how do we show scientifically that chiropractic can change the physical body? of, okay, great. Again, nothing wrong with that. That needs to happen because, we need to be able to reach people. We need to be able to talk to them. We need to be able to get them to get what we do in that scientific language that's more accepted and understood. And here we have Dr. Dispenza that is doing that on a whole nother level of, here's how the brain actually can self-heal and self-regulate. Here is how we can tap into that innate intelligence and that energy system and check in with our belief systems and see where we're creating our own interference. And he's putting the science behind it.
Yeah.
So I got excited because, I have this little scientific background of being a chiropractor and wanting to understand how the body works too. And that appealed to me. So I jumped on board and started doing some of his trainings, and was really excited to be part of one of his last advanced trainings that he did, where he brought in all kinds of neuroscientists, and he was doing all kinds of different scientific experiments in it. I participated in one where we were doing EEG studies of 4 days of intensive meditation with him and post. That was what I took part in. So they hooked me up to an EEG, did a brain study on me, and took that data. I went and did my 4 days of mind-blowing meditation with Dr. Dispenza, where he had us up at like 4 a.m, and doing all kinds of different levels of his meditation techniques there. And then they did post EEG studies afterwards. And, as part of a collective of all kinds of data that was being collected. I don't know what the results of those were, because quite honestly, it was quite a bit of money to get those results from sitting down with the neuroscientists to go through that. They were all from Germany, and, it was quite a whole nother thing to get those results. So I just decided I was just going to be part of Dr. Dispenza's data.
Yeah.
But it turned out that particular workshop that I was in blew the roof off of. He had reached such a level with all of us that his research was blowing through charts of everything else that he'd already done in previous workshops and things. So it was pretty, it's cool to just know that, oh, cool, I was there. It was part of that research in some way or another, you know. There was lots of different studies that were going on. That's when he first introduced his telomere study. There was a group that he did blood work on prior and looked at what their telomere lengths. 4 days after, they did more blood work to look at the telomere lengths. And then he sent them home with strict instructions of meditating at least 5 days a week. And several months later, looking at telomere lengths. So telomeres are what are at the end of chromosomes, and they shrink, and it's what kind of ages us per se. So there he linked like actual scientific data of how meditation can extend that telomere length. And there was one of the other studies that he introduced during that seminar. Heart math was there, where we're studying heart coherence. So actually the Mortars introduced me to heart math because they were affiliated with heart math right at the beginning when heart math was first developing. I don't have the current technology way back 10, 15 years ago, whenever that came out. I had all kinds of heart math devices within the clinic. We got people going on introducing them to increasing their overall heart coherence. So those were more studies. Dr. Dispenza has worked also very intensely with heart math as well, using a lot of now their current technology to measure that heart coherence and brain activity that's happening. So So again, it was just for me exciting to just be part of all of that development of the scientific research and his concepts of what he talks about are so absolutely parallel in line with what Dr. Mortar had been talking about for over 50 years there. So again, I often refer to his work.
Yep.
Clients reading his books and trying to educate themselves on a different level, because the good news is there's all kinds of people writing books about these things, all kinds of doctors and scientists now doing studies on these things. So again, for different clients, I'll have collections of different books, like okay, what's going to resonate with this one? Carolyn Leaf is great for my clients who want to link spiritual scripture into the brain. She's done a fabulous job I believe she's a neuropsychologist. I might be getting that wrong, of linking scripture to the brain activity and the science of that side of things of it. So for my clients who resonate with that belief system, that's the perfect book for them.
Yeah.
For those that are willing to engage in meditation, Dr. Dispenza's work is a great link. For those who, like the science of the cells and genetics and that side of it, Dr. Lipton's is going to be a great resource for that. So, yeah, I feel blessed with the people that I've been exposed to. And again, having gone to the founding school of chiropractic, there are amazing people that show up to teach us there, that come from all over the world to teach at that particular school. So I've had the benefit of being taught by some pretty amazing leaders in my profession as well. And I just bring all that together, and it's part of who I am and part of what I can share with others there in their treatments, and helping them break through what their limiting beliefs are and allowing that body the opportunity to self-heal and self-regulate.
Amazing. So exciting. And, as Joe Dispenza meditations well, I've done 2 Joe Dispenza courses, not in person. And I was planning on going to one in Toronto, to a week-long advanced retreat in Toronto. And then COVID happened. So yeah, and no Toronto one has come up again. They've started doing them elsewhere in the world, but no Toronto one has been announced yet. And I would still very much love to go. Because Glenn and I, we did one together, which was so fantastic, and it was amazing to do it together too, to have that experience and to be able to talk about it and share it, and have our own sort of individual takes on it, but then as this tiny little duo, this little collective. And it was also really cool because every 10 minutes or so, after talking about something, he'd say, okay, now turn to the person next to you and explain in simple terms what it is that I just talked about. And it'd be like, oh, the first few times that it happened, but then it's like, okay, at some point soon, he's going to tell us to turn to each other. So really pay attention and understand. And then, blah, blah, blah. But it was such an effective technique. And it really, he was, so far my experience has been, in that one that Glenn and I did together, and then one that I did on my own. And there are some meditations in the one that I did on my own that I just refer to again and again and again and again, because there's just, they just resonate with me right now. They're just so powerful. But I really like the way he lays things out, where he introduces something, he talks about it, explain it to the person next to you, then he recaps, and then he builds a little more, and then it's okay, so what we've talked about. And it just, for me, it's a great way of learning, because there's just all of this repetition and layering, and with the diagrams that he draws, another like a visual component to it all. And then just knowing that he's collecting all of this data, and to think that you were one of those people, with the little caps on, with all of the, electrodes and whatever being measured. like they're coming up with ways to measure this, to quantify the results, because really, I mean, there are so many people who, write in, who get up on the stages, who talk about these seemingly miraculous, forms of healing that they've experienced. They're doing it with their minds, they're doing it with these, techniques that they're being introduced to. And so, I'm really excited that all of this scientific data is being gathered, because there are so many people that seem to require empirical evidence before they go and embark on something. For me, and I don't know if I've, been this way my entire life or not. I know that I have felt things, throughout my life. But really for me, the last several years really has been a lot about faith. And it was, I think Wayne Dyer that I first heard say, believe it and then you'll see it, rather than, I'll believe it or I'll see it. Oh, wait, did I just get that
Believe
backwards?
it when I see it is what it used to be, right? I'll believe it when I see it.
Yes. No.
So so you're saying he turned that around to say
Yes.
no,
And
don't
now
see
it's
it
like
then I'll
neither of
believe
them
it.
is making sense. But the faith part, the thinking, the believing,
Yeah.
and thinking it into being.
Yeah.
And, that's the thing. It's not that, you need to see
I'll
it
believe it
first
and then I'll
to
see it.
believe it. Yeah. So that, so for me it's just like, well, if someone gets up and talks about, I've experienced this, if an x-ray shows up that those bone spurs, weren't there. You talk about the 80-year-old patient who was, in a world war, who was in a concentration camp, who experienced all sorts of atrocities and traumas and whatever, but is 80 years old, typically an age when people, are falling apart, according to a lot of common thinking, yet has this beautifully perfect, amazing spine. Well, is that not proof enough? Is that, that it happened, so I guess maybe, that enough of this is happening and enough people are interested in it, enough people are curious. Quantum theory is really shifting, how people are thinking, where, it's not about the things that we see and that we know and touch and experience through our five senses, but that there's, it's all energy, that it's infinite, and that, time, space, blown out of the water don't even exist, kind of thing. But we're still in this seemingly materialistic experience of things that, we know and understand. That can be such a big leap, such a tall order, to sort of like go from, this way of thinking, and, I know it, so I believe it, I see it, I can touch it, so I believe it, so it's real, to, I don't know how to measure this, but it's happening. And so let's just get on board with this incredible, surge and emergence.
Mhm.
And, how like allow ourselves to like expand and be expanded by it, kind of thing, at the same time. It's just, I'm loving what I'm studying. I am so grateful that, I crossed paths with you, and I am so grateful that I have a partner in life where we talk about this stuff all the time. And that we have a kid who challenges us, and even though, I can't say that she was raised, in this, with some of these beliefs or this kind of thinking, she's around it, she's immersed in it, and, out of ear, slight within earshot, she thinks we can't hear her, like we'll hear her talking to her friends, or, see something that she's writing, or she'll tell us about an experience that she had with her friends, where she is, she's just so much more in tune with who she is at 16 than I was, even in my early 40s, never mind at 16, and she's living her potential and her power, and in just her constant sort of challenges with us, I sort of realized, and I can't remember if I told you or not, but I realized a couple of weeks ago, one of the reasons that she is in my life is there's a thing that I'm working on, and she is here to continue challenging that thing for me every single time. There's like, so I can't help but shift, because she's coming at me constantly with this one thing that I am working on, and she's a reminder that Mamo, you can change, you can change, you can change, you can change. You don't have to, stay stuck, and keep changing, because I'm not intentionally staying stuck, but there's just, she keeps bringing these reminders of shift that perspective, shift that perspective. And it's great. And that was such a super cool aha for me to experience a few weeks ago when I realized, oh, that's another amazing reason that Milana is my kid. Because we firmly believe that Milana chose us as parents. I mean, we all are, co-creating this experience that we are having together as a family collective. But we really, we don't think that it was just about, Glenn, me together, and then boop, out popped a baby kind of thing. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So, oh my gosh, so much cool stuff. And I know this conversation could keep going. I do want to ask you about one more thing, but Honey Bunch, do you want to ask anything, chime in with anything?
No, I probably did at a certain point, but now it's gone. But it's all about beliefs, right? We won't go
And the
too deep into it.
S.E.M.Os.
And placebos?
And this, well, oh, that too, but, and the S.E.M.Os,
The S.E.M.Os.
the
Oh, okay.
subconscious emotional
Yeah.
memory overrides.
Okay. Yeah. The big thing for me in this last year has been realizing, how much a part of a person's experience, their beliefs are. Just like the whole reaction to this illness, and now the new iteration is sort of, depending on where you live, it was sort of like was masks and distancing for a while, and then some places are a lot more locked down, and I'm sort of in tune with those because that's sort of where I'm from. But the latest thing is the vaccine, and to me it's just the reaction to it, the necessity to have it is really fascinating because I belong to a community, like a spiritual community, and it's just like I'm not quite aligned with the majority of the people within that community on that issue in terms of, a lot of them are older and they just like, they're coming at this from a place of like, this is a good thing to do to get this vaccine.
Or are they coming from a place of fear?
Yeah, well, I'm trying not to say that, but it's sort of, that's the framework is they're sort of scheduled depending on their age as to when they can get it, and that, the health field has already been through that. But to me, it's like, okay, the science part, the people are very rigidly connected to, like, we need scientific proof. If an average materialist person says, nothing exists unless you can measure it. And so with science is, you need the scientific method. You need to be able to replicate the science to show, well, then this is what we're going to do with it, whether it's a medicine or a treatment. And with vaccines, they are, by their nature, they're experimental. And this last series of vaccines for this illness, they're definitely experimental, but that seems to be left out of, of the way that it's being rolled out is like the rapidity, like it's just instant almost, like what it was being introduced, and it was introduced and now we're in it. And for some people, they've left that part out. It's like, okay, it exists, therefore it's safe for me, and then I'm not going to have it, but it's up to everyone what they want to do with that. And it really boils down to, what do they believe that it's doing for them? If they're believing that it's making them safe, it will in all likelihood make them, their experience better, because they'll feel safe. And some of them may have adverse reactions, and some people have died. Obviously, that seems to be par for the course for a lot of vaccines anyway. that there's going to be a range, and most people are in the middle, and for some people who choose not to get it, that also could be out of fear. I choose to not get it out of an abundance of feeling belief in my good health. Like I have an immune system, I have microbiome, and I'm mindful of things like washing my hands and that kind of thing. But it's just interesting seeing the reaction of others to this kind of thing. How it's now there are like societal pressures around getting it, and it may, depending on where you live, be a requirement for your job, for travel, for things I haven't even thought of yet. So it's just, I mean, I don't need you to comment on it. I'm just saying, like, it's just interesting. It's another, but you can't be wish. But there's another aspect of this whole thing. And when you were talking earlier, I was thinking about the importance of a network of support for changing your experience. That some people have a network of support to support them in feeling sorry for ourselves. That's what it boils down to, because people would love to share the aches and pains and oh, I got this and my sister had that, that's terrible, whatever. But the flip side of it is, when you have a good network of support within, like, a spiritual community or even a book group or something, where you get to share experiences and, like, kind of up level awareness of things like we're talking about, that the change is possible, and it's only really doable if you are willing to imagine and see that you are in control of the vast majority of your experience. So it's even though people are online and they're sort of building new communities, I think a lot of people miss that kind of human interaction that they would normally get on a Sunday with a church or something, or even just meeting with friends for a walk and then a coffee. Like, okay, that would be nice to have again, right?
Mhm.
So yeah,
Without masks.
without masks.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
Honey Bunch, we've talked so much about COVID in this house, and really it's now at a very sort of like calm, sort of stream fluidity like level. Whereas at the beginning, even though I think fundamentally you and I were in agreement in terms of our beliefs and how we view the unfoldment of cold COVID, we went through our own individual responses. And I mean, Dr. Christina knows, because she treated me when my body was just like completely contorted from the amount of stress that I felt at working at the store for the first few months, when the different protocols were being rolled out, and I worked in a place where it just really felt ultimately was unworkable, because of how I felt there, because of how the staff felt there, and because of certain protocols that weren't being followed. And so for me, I mean, there like, from, I changed from meditating once in a while to definitely once a day, to almost 5 times a day getting together, with my community in Los Angeles, online. So, whether it was for spirit breath meditation on my own, a prayer partner, a prayer group, a healing circle, like every day, all of a sudden, it got to the point where this is how I am staying sane. Like, this is how I am navigating this situation, because being energy, there are so many different energy levels, like boiled down to awareness and observation or non-observation of protocols, opinions that people would have, and working in a place where hundreds of people would come through the doors every day, working with people who, had different viewpoints and opinions on what was going on. it was just incredible to then come home and after dealing with all of this, at the store all day, to end up talking with Glenn about this stuff, and where there was this time where you were fixated on, why is this happening? What's the meaning of this? Why, whatever. For me, it was more about, okay, it's what's happening. How am I going to respond to it? How am I going to go forward? And over the past, well, year now, we've gone through our evolutions and changes and whatever. I too right now am choosing to not get vaccinated because I don't feel I need to. And part of it is because I'm pretty sure I had it before it even became a world thing. The other part is, I, like Glenn, I just feel like I have everything in me to support me living a, vibrant life. And I don't feel the need, however, I do realize it is a personal choice. And I am doing my best to not judge why someone chooses to get it or why they choose not to. And what kind of happened yesterday as we were listening to the news on the way home from work was, I guess it was the prime minister was talking, or someone was talking about the prime minister talking about not feeling comfortable having people carrying vaccination passports or some kind of documentation that they've been vaccinated. And I started thinking, if I had to get it, to be able to work at the clinic, if I had to get it to be able to travel to Alberta, say for my mom's 75th birthday, next month, if I had to have it to be able to enter into the United States, to go to Los Angeles, where I've been studying for several, years now, and have this incredible community I've never met in person and only know them online, would I get it? And if I get it, if I don't get it, is it because I'm trying to prove a point? Is it because those things, they're not important enough to me to like this is what I started thinking about yesterday. And so, it's, for me, it's no longer as cut and dry as, I'm getting it, I'm not getting it. End of story. It's like, what, there may come a situation or a time where I feel like, okay, yeah, this is important enough, this is relevant enough, and I'm getting it for this reason. But I still feel like I'm going to make that decision from a place of confidence and from a place of faith and from a place of, innate wisdom and intuition, versus I'm being told to do this. And this is what the majority of people around me are doing. And it's what's expected. So that's why I'm going to do it. So that's kind of where I am right now on this.
Yep.
Yep. Period.
Now it's a loaded topic, right?
It is. Yeah, it is.
It's there's great, you know, where I was heavily educated about vaccines in school, both from the concept of, what mainstream medical is taught and how it works, and the concepts of why it works and how it works, to being heavily taught in school that, well, that's just interfering with the body's innate ability to heal and self-regulate itself again.
Mm.
Chiropractic had a huge success rate in pandemics of the Spanish flu, of being able to really help people. But yeah, it's a sticky subject because as chiropractors, we've been silenced. We're not allowed to talk about this topic anymore here in Canada. So that happened just prior to COVID, that they took the immune system out of our scope of practice, and we are repetitively being told that we are not allowed to talk about this topic. So having gone from, I used to give seminars on this in my clinic once upon a time, to being told I'm not allowed to talk about it anymore, is really heartbreaking to me, because I think I think there is a bigger picture out there that people aren't understanding. My own personal reaction was, all right, there's this virus that's out there. Awesome. What do I got to do to take care of me and be the strongest me I can? So for so many clients, they've let their health slide during this whole COVID thing. People have gained weight and they've become sedentary, and they've really become depressed, and mental illness has become huge. And but that just wasn't my training in chiropractic school. Was this is when we shine. This is when we're able to help people stay healthy and strong. And I need to do that for myself. So for me, it's been a time of, all right, well, seeing as though they're shutting down my clinic on me, I'm going to take this time to take care of me there, and further implement nutritional changes, exercise more, and do more self-care of, I'm going to use this time to get into potentially the best shape of my life. There is what I chose to look at this time as being of, and what are my opportunities of where I can now have time to make changes that I didn't feel like I could have time to make before. So again, it's right from the beginning, I said, listen, people, like, we need to build our immune systems. We need to build up our bodies so we can be better self-healing, self-regulating mechanisms. But, I just, even using the word immune system, I could get in trouble now. So it's frustrating a little bit what's happening in the world in some regards of the regulations that may or may not be coming out, and some that have come out. Again, I just want to encourage people to take care of themselves and to keep adding health back into their equation of their lifestyle wherever they can, so they can show up as the best they can there, so they can make those decisions for themselves based on what feels right for each individual. And ideally, they're going to be the strongest, best themselves to manage that, and the results, however it shows up for them in their lives.
Okay, you know what? I just looked at the clock. We've been almost 2 hours. This is a record. So just before we go to the super rapid fire question round, I do want to ask, you've been out surfing a few times now. Have you mastered the pop-up? Have you been able to get on the board and stay on the board and ride a wave?
I've not mastered it yet. I have yet to master it. I have popped up, I have stood up, I have yet to stay up.
Okay. All right. Well, I look forward to hearing more
super
stories.
Fun doing it.
Right on. Okay, so Honey Bunch, it's time for the super rapid fire question round. So Glenn's just getting ready with his questions, I guess. So you're going to have 1 minute to answer as many questions as possible. And again, just straight off the top of your head, no deep thought or anything, just whatever comes out. And then at the end, Glenn will let you know what you've won. And once again, for those listening, one is in quotation marks. So I'm getting my phone ready in order to do the timer. And so, Honey Bunch, there's a text from you. I kept checking my phone just in case, but I guess I didn't see when they came. Okay. Timer. Okay, Honey Bunch, are you ready?
Yep.
On your mark.
Okay.
Get set.
Dr. Christina.
Go.
Do you sing in the shower?
Yes.
What is your favorite city to visit?
Victoria.
Which do you prefer, planes or boats?
Boats.
Yoga or cycling?
Oh, historically yoga, but I'm getting into cycling.
Swearing or hitting a pillow?
Swearing.
Singing or dancing?
Dancing.
Skiing or swimming?
Skiing.
Spring or autumn?
Spring.
Cats or dogs?
Ooh, cats.
Van Morrison or Van Halen?
Van Morrison.
Uh, Reading or writing?
Reading.
Books or movies?
Movies.
Sweet or savory?
Sweet.
Ding, 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 ding.
Okay.
All right. And you know what? I'm sorry. I just remembered you're also mom to a beautiful, friendly, amazing dog, Lola.
Yeah.
When I was introducing you earlier, I said the cats, but I forgot about Lola. All right. Okay. So Glenn, tell Dr. Christina what she's won.
Okay. You've won a few quotes.
Woo!
Inspiring quotes.
Nice.
This one, which is I found in the book. I don't know if you've heard of Dr. Eric Pearl.
Yeah. I
Reconnection.
haven't read it, but I've heard. Yep.
Okay. And he's quoting from the Living This Moment Sutras for Instant Enlightenment. I love this quote. The straight lines of time are actually threads of a web extending to infinity. I like that.
That's nice.
And the next one is, this is from the, it's Pam Grout's book. Basically, it's Course in Miracles, like a daily thing, which I don't really focus on Course in Miracles part, but there's some excellent little quotes and stories in there. So she says on day 361, I used to adore a good protest. I marched against war, against guns, and against racism. Nothing's more exhilarating than carrying a sign and chanting in resistance with fellow comrades. But it finally dawned on me that being against something only adds energy to a reality I no longer want. It gives things I don't like more credit than they deserve, and it negates my power to create something better. Now, I prefer to be for things. I prefer to create better things, things that make the old things obsolete. Remember dial telephones, black and white TVs, card catalogs, and libraries? Nobody carried placards to protest those things. Rather, someone came up with a better vision. Fighting against something only makes it more real. Forgiving, aka no longer resisting, makes room for new things to burst forth. It makes room for a new vision. There's still no shortage of things I'd like to change. It's just that now I go about it by using my true power to imagine new things. I use two very significant words. What if?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Love it. Nice.
So thank you for introducing me to a different type of what if with this treatment and with this, your energy and what you do. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Wow. All right. Well, thanks, Honey Bunch. And thank you, Dr. Christina, for being with us today on Who Do You Think You Are? If people are interested in getting in touch with you or finding more about you and the work that you do, what's the best way for them to do so?
I can go to my website, alignmentforlife.ca. That would probably be the most direct link.
All right. So we're going to have a slide up so that people can see that. And for people who are just listening, again, that is alignmentforlife.ca. Okay, so thank you so much for being here today. This was such a juicy, rich conversation. And even though I see you 3 days a week, I know this conversation could continue right now, but we're going to cap it here today and get on with our Saturdays, where today in Victoria, it looks super nice and sunny outside right now. So, or at least it does in Saanishton. What's it like in Sydney? 10 minutes away.
A few clouds, but you know, it's good.
Yeah. All right. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Honey Bunch, for co-steering. Thank you, Dr. Christina Clapham, for being our guest today. And thank you to everyone who has tuned into another episode of Who Do You Think You Are? My name is Lassia. I have been your host, and we look forward to seeing you once again super soon for a brand spanking new episode of Who Do You Think You Are? Bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
This has been an episode of Who Do You Think You Are? an exploration into how our thoughts, beliefs, and feelings create our reality. My name is Lasia Kohut, and I have been your host. My co-host has been Glenn Sheridan. We'd like to thank the following for helping make this podcast a reality. Today's special guest, Dr. Christina Clapham. Music, Vasco Lorenco, copyright 123rf.com. Background illustration, Sakma Sterke, copyright 123rf.com. For more information on this podcast and our Lasia Kohut Soul Excavator, please visit www.lasiakohut.com. If you like what you've heard, please like, subscribe, and or let us know by leaving a comment. Thanks for tuning into Who Do You Think You Are?